So the reading comes from the book of Revelations, the last book in the Bible, and it mentions Michael, also referred to elsewhere as the Archangel Michael, the Prince of the Angels. So it sounds like he's some kind of boss, the big cheese in angel circles. Here we hear that Michael and his angels fight a dragon and cast it down with its angels. I, for one, haven't really spent much time thinking about angels. I haven't spent much time looking at Revelations or even reading it. I mean, angels are usually portrayed as nice, soft, caring sorts, aren't they? They pop down when people need them on feathery wings. Talk to them in soothing voices. Bring messages from God of hope and joy. We never seem to hear about them really being warriors or fighting, scrappers. Michael is clearly the exception. Now, Michael is mentioned a few times, and each time he is a figure of action, doing something on behalf of God. Yet he is also depicted in some faiths as a healer, a protector, a saviour. And this is where it starts to look a bit familiar, because these are many of the descriptions we've used for Jesus Christ. And in fact, some scholars have said that Michael is the pre-incarnation and post-resurrection persona of Jesus. Yeah, I had to give that some thought too. In other words, Michael is Jesus before he was born, and Michael is Jesus after he's gone back up to heaven. Now that was an interesting thought. Jesus, an angel, a warrior, a leader of armies. That's certainly how some of the Jews hoped he was going to be. That really started kind of messing with my head. I mean, I'd always have thought Jesus was, well, Jesus. End of. But then I've never really looked at angels before, or even thought much about them. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus is Michael or Michael is Jesus, but what I'm saying is that it's an intriguing thought, and I have a very open mind. I truly believe that we should look at all available information, explanations, theories, and then come to our own conclusions. Not just blindly accept what someone else says, but to find our own belief, our own way to faith, our own theology, if you like. And this, I believe, leads to our very own special relationship with God. So back to Revelations. We generally view Revelations as some sort of cataclysmic event, as a foretelling of doom, foreboding, the end of the world, foretelling the end of days. And I must admit, until this week, that was kind of how I viewed it, having never really looked much at it. But then I found something really interesting that the BBC did. They gathered together some reporters, a few scholars, theologians, etc., and they decided to look at Revelations. And what they come up with is quite interesting. And it gave me some food for thought. I won't go through the entire thing, because I believe it was like an hour-long programme. But I'll boil it down to what I saw as the relevant parts. The main thing here was Revelations was written about events close to the time of its authorship. After all, it starts with comments about the time of these events being near, and it ends with similar mentions of these times are coming. Written by a man named John, whilst he was on the island of Patmos. Some thought he might have been sent there for being a bit of a troublemaker, sent there by the authorities, exiled if you like. Others thought he was there preaching. It is generally accepted now that John of Patmos was not the same John as the book of John. One thing is certain though, he was very well known in the early church throughout the Roman province of Asia Minor. And this is shown in his letters, the letters at the start of Revelations, where he writes to the 7 main churches in Asia Minor. And he clearly knows the people there. But the passage we have looked at mentions the 7-headed dragon. On looking at that, these historians believe that perhaps this was a reference to Rome, being built on 7 hills, and at this time of writing had actually had 7 emperors. So it is possible that this was all a warning for the people against buying into the Roman life, against following the Romans' lead. Because we have to remember, by then the Romans were worshipping their own emperors. Emperors were gods. And so, in some respects, this could be taken as a warning to the people of the area to keep to the true faith and not to start following the Romans in worshipping emperors. And then there is the number of the beast, 666. We've all heard of it, and anyone that's seen the film Omen, Damien, Omen 2, or whatever the third one was called, will know that the number of the beast, 666, is supposed to be the mark of the devil. But is it? And I guess you can see where this is going now. In the late 19th century, there was an excavation of an Egyptian city, and the archaeologists found a cache of old papyri. They were taken to Oxford, where even to this day they are still being examined. But as part of this cache, there was a part of the Book of Revelations. But in this document, it gives the number 616. So, decisions. What is it? 666, 616, or is it some other number completely? When they looked at these numbers using numerology, which is quite common in the time, the numbers 666 came out as Emperor Nero. Because numerology takes numbers, letters, and names, etc. And, as we know, Nero was a somewhat dodgy emperor who persecuted the Christians and even blamed them for a fire which gutted Rome at the time. 616 comes out as Caligula. Both fit with the theory as being hate figures for the early church. Nero persecuted the Christians in Rome relentlessly. And Caligula went even further and offended the entire Jewish people by building a statue to himself in the temple in Jerusalem. And even Armageddon didn't escape the revamp of this program. By John's time, many famous battles had been fought on a plain in Jezreel called Al-Megiddo. And this is thought to be the source of the word Armageddon. Because what more fitting place for the final battle between good and evil to happen than on a plain that has seen so many famous battles? So the upshot is that maybe, just maybe, Revelations was an attack against Rome, the Roman occupation, the Roman take on religion, and pretty much all things Roman. So now this is all quite confusing. We've got Michael, the warrior angel, may have been Jesus. Jesus may have been Michael. Revelations may not have been revelations, it may have just been a political statement. And even the number of the beast may be out by 50. So where does that leave us? What are we to believe? Who should we listen to? Well, I'm still of the opinion that we should make up our own minds. Doubt what we are told. Examine it closely, discuss it, pull it apart. After all, if it's the truth, it will stand scrutiny. Our doubts are what keep us looking, listening, questioning, and journeying forward towards our faith. And so that is a vital part of growing in faith. I have, over time, looked at all sorts of sources for insight into the Bible, insight into God, Jesus. And the one thing that stands out loud and clear to me is that everyone has their own opinion. No one can definitively prove their position or their belief. So I go back to the old default of look, listen, think. People may remember that from a Crossing the Road campaign. And I thought, what I need to do is look at all the available sources of information, not just one source, look at several sources. Balance it out, even negative sources. Listen to what God is trying to tell me. Not always easy, but I do my best. And think of how these lessons can benefit the community around me. I chose to follow Jesus. I chose to follow Jesus as a role model, as a guide, as a sort of, almost like an elder brother that you look to worship and pray to God. Because to me, that is what Jesus asked of me. That is what I understood of his message. Others will have different interpretations, but that's okay. It is by sharing these thoughts, these interpretations, these questions, these doubts with others, that we learn and grow in our own faith. There is no one who has the full picture, the definitive answer. But the real challenge is to realise that and accept it, so that we can start to really look, really listen, but most importantly, really think. Now to me, that is a revelation.